Chapter 8 is about a whole series of housing types that have essentially been prohibited from contemporary zoning bylaws. And we refer to them as the missing middle because they are outside of low density and high density housing that is normally permitted in zoning. The contemporary scale of zoning, as I mentioned, is currently either small or large, and there's very little in between. So we'll discuss the types that are very beneficial in delicate density that can easily be inserted into your existing bylaws because they're house scale types. The first and most familiar because of the Vermont state legislation is the accessory dwelling unit. And we see many of these throughout neighborhoods in Vermont because they were historically developed, frequently over carriage houses or as standalone ADUs. The next type is we looked at this image earlier of this very delicate duplex in the neighborhood we stayed in Montpelier, and the really interesting thing about the duplex is the scale is virtually identical to the single family, and so they can cohabitate in very low density zoning districts with virtually anonymously. They can coexist without even really being noticed. The next is the triplex, and I love this image from Waterbury because the only way, once again, that you realize that these are three discrete units is because of the porches and the front doors. That's one thing that Vermont has a rich history of, is large historic homes that have been subdivided very, very reasonably into smaller units. And so you can triple the density of a neighborhood simply by subdividing a large house. Now, one type that is, even though I found this historic image from Bennington of mill housing, the row house really isn't commonly found in the state of Vermont. It's an interesting type because it is single family, it's just attached instead of detached. And it is a very logical way to insert medium density between the lower density neighborhoods and your village and town centers. Cottage courts are another type that aren't commonly found in the state of Vermont. Here is an example of one in Bristol with actually houses rather than cottages. But it's a way that you can discreetly increase density, whereas from the street it appears to be still very discrete single family cottages. And so this is a very useful tool for densification and can easily be codified within your existing bylaws. The last and most intense option is the multi-unit, and this can be anywhere from 4 to 8, and this lovely old house in Montpelier was actually over 16 units. I was counting doorbells in this house, and I couldn't get all the way around the back, so I wasn't sure if I missed any, but I counted 16. And the interesting thing about this house is it was a very large historic home that an addition was added to the rear, and it was subdivided, and it fits in very beautifully in the neighborhood. So even multi-units can be delicately inserted. The one thing to bear in mind about this is that it's a type that isn't the big garden apartment, and so the typical 8-unit multi-building garden apartment is a different thing altogether, and that is high density. And so all of these types can be used to discreetly and contextually increase housing options and affordability within towns and villages.